This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and oh, happy days. Lately, we see that every new smartphone doesn't have to be $1,000 or more. These are the TCL 10L and 10 Pro, so these are affordable phones. The 10L is $250. The Pro is $450. These are unlocked GSM 4G LTE phones. So if you're on CDMA carrier, which means Sprint and Verizon right now, not so much for you. But we're going to look at them now. So the 10L has a 6.5-inch display, and that's an LCD display, non-OLED display, which for $250, hey, that's fair. It's full HD plus resolution. And you have a Snapdragon 665, which is a mid-range CPU, which again is fair for the price. Interestingly enough, though, you get 6 gigs of RAM, which is pretty beefy for a budget phone, and 64 gigs of storage, but there's a micro SD card slot, so yeah, that you can expand storage. The 10 Pro ups the game with better cameras. We'll talk about that a little later in the camera section. And you get a slightly higher end Snapdragon mid-range CPU, the 675, still 6 gigs of RAM, but 128 gigs of base storage, again with a micro SD card slot. The Pro gets you an OLED or AMOLED display, full HD plus resolution again. So they call the LCD display on the more affordable 10L a Notch display, like not a notch, I guess, because there's a little OHEL camera up in the corner. The 10 Pro has a kind of teardrop in the center where the front-facing selfie camera lives. It's either way, I leave it up to you. One thing I will say, the OLED display is obviously going to be the prettier one, and they have their Next Vision display terminology. Now, TCL is a company that you probably know from TVs. They say they're the second biggest manufacturer of TVs in the world. And also, they're the company behind BlackBerry Android phones and Alcatel phones. But anyway, so they're claiming they're using some of their great display chops coming from TVs in these panels. So the OLED display is rather nice looking, and there's a whole bunch of settings on both of these phones that you can use to kind of do SDR to HDR and control the vividness and all that sort of thing. But the OLED display is the curved one, curved on the sides, and boy, it's like no accidental edge protection. It's been driving me crazy. It reminds me of like the first iteration ever of an edge display. It's really annoying. So in that way, that's one thing I prefer about the 10L, which has a traditional flat display, no curvy, big curvy edges on the side. That one is not a bad display. It's not nearly as beautiful and vibrant. Okay, there's that, but it has a slight pink color cast, it seems to me. Now you can play with the color balance and settings on it, but the thing about these two phones really is the fact that you get a big display and pretty nice quality displays. Even though I'm picking on the LCD a little bit, it's still a pretty nice display for relatively little money. So that's going to be the strong point of these phones. Another selling point is there is actually a headphone jack. Oh my God, right? And your usual USB-C port as well. When it comes to audio, speaking of headphone jacks, for Bluetooth audio, it has something they call Super Bluetooth, so it can connect to up to 4 Bluetooth headphones or speakers at once. Is that useful? I leave that up to you to decide. The Bluetooth profile support is actually pretty good too. Not just aptX, but aptX HD, AAC, and LDAC for you audiophile types. So those are some higher quality audio codecs for when you're streaming over Bluetooth. So again, the TCL 10L, the less expensive phone, pulls ahead a little bit because it has a fingerprint scanner on the back. I know a lot of you miss that and like that, and for me, it worked just fine. And on the 10 Pro, you have an in-display fingerprint scanner, which also worked pretty well for me. I've seen some reviewers complaining, but I haven't had any problems with it, other than the locations. Kind of too far down towards the bottom of the phone, so you really have to support it, you know, so you don't accidentally drop it. But they both have 2D facial recognition, which is the not terribly secure kind, but unless you're a really important person and people are carrying around life-size pictures of you, that's probably okay. When it comes to the design, these are actually very nice looking phones, which is not unlike the iPhone SE 2020 edition and the Samsung Galaxy A51, their more affordable Android phone that we just looked at. You have glass backs on here, so this stands out a little bit, say, from the Moto G family, which typically are very affordable and good features, but they look kind of plasticky and not very exciting. These actually look really nice. So the 10L gets the pretty blue back, and the Pro gets a kind of frosted finish gray. Yeah, it's gray, but the frosted finish is kind of nice. Despite that, they're both slippery phones. For some reason, I find the frosted glass back one actually a little bit slipperier. Thank God there's a clear TPU case in the box with each one of these. The power button on the side is also very easy to press accidentally. Often that button's a little stiffer on other phones, so it doesn't depress quite so easily, so I found I was hitting it when I didn't want to hit it a lot. Be my only design complaint. Otherwise, these look pretty darn nice. They have long strips of cameras on the back, a lot of camera lenses here again, which we'll talk about, and they're fairly well integrated into the design. Again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I'll leave that up to you, but I think that they've done a pretty good job, especially given the price point of these phones. There is no wireless charging here, and there is no IP water resistance or dust resistance. Again, pretty fair for the price, so we're not going to ding them on that. Again, 4G LTE here and unlocked GSM. If you want 5G, they say they're going to have a 10 5G model later this year, but I don't think it's coming to the United States. We have an ambient display here and always on display, and we have a quick access button, so you can use it to launch Google Assistant or whatever you want. In fact, you can program it for single press, double press, and that's pretty nice. I like that. This is Android 10. That's a good thing. That's still the current version of Android with TCL's UI, and some of it's good, some of it's bad. They throw a lot of software at you on this, and you can fix this at least because you can change your preferences for this, but the default is to organize your app drawer in different categories. That makes sense to the folks at TCL, but not so much maybe to me or to you. But you can go with normal alphabetical look and other kind of grids. I just hate seeing software there for the sake of software, and it feels a little bit like that. The rest of it, the settings and all that modifications, pretty light, pretty fine. Most of it really is geared towards that display. They have a lock feature to lock folders if you want to do that, and something to keep the phone optimized and running good, which a lot of manufacturers do. Again, if you get that 10 Pro, you get something you don't see anymore, which is an IR blaster, otherwise known as your wireless TV remote. Control your TV, control your stereo. Kind of makes sense since TCL's in that business that they would have that feature. So if you miss that, which we haven't seen forever, well, it's actually here, and you can control a variety of AV gear and even air conditioners. The regular 10L does not get that feature. So as you might guess, the 10 Pro is supposed to have the better cameras here. We've got super night mode, but it's pretty useless. You can see a picture I took just using regular mode versus super night mode. One is not better than the other, and neither of them are very good. And that wasn't even in a very dark room. It was just in a pretty dim room. So for the price, we don't expect too much with night mode, but if you're thinking about something like a Pixel 3a or 3a XL maybe, that will certainly take a lot better pictures than either one of these. The Pro has the higher resolution camera. You can see the specs on screen right now, 64 megapixel main shooter versus 48. So we're all megapixel range now. A lot of camera phones have high megapixel ratings. I will say about the 10L, that it shows more barrel distortion, whether it's the main, which is your typical base wide angle, or the ultra wide angle. It's better controlled with the 10 Pro, and that's even with software controlled distortion that's available for both of these. And the pictures on the 10L, the photos, sometimes they're good. It's kind of up and down. Mostly in good light, they're good. But if there's any high contrast scene, if you got sun dappling on the sidewalk, you're going to get overexposed spots and all that sort of thing. And video on both of these tends to be a little dark sometimes, but particularly the 10L. It's dark, it's color noisy, it's not really good looking at all. But on the 10 Pro, in good lighting outdoors, it can take some pretty decent video. And the electronic stabilization, because no optical hardware stabilization in this price range, does a fairly good job. It doesn't look lurchy, jumpy at all. So better that. And you have the usual fast motion, stop motion, slow motion kind of features. You can get slower slow motion if you go with the 10 Pro. The interesting thing with both of these is that you don't get a telephoto lens, which I feel sad about. I love that for doing portraits of people, for doing pets, animals, wild animals, squirrels even, whatever you got, right now that you can take a picture of, and it doesn't have that. Instead, we have macro cameras, which seems to be a thing now. OnePlus was doing that too, and I don't know how often many of us really want to take macros. Do you love bugs that much? I don't. And it's also hard to focus because these are typically fixed focus lenses. You have to find the right, very shallow point when you got the focus right. 10 Pro does do a better job with macro shots. It does have a portrait mode, and it's fairly good, actually. It does blur the background fairly well, and not noisy, not weird, overdone, and the edge detection is reasonably good on it. So when it comes to the cameras, I would say if the camera is really important to you, the 10 Pro would be the better choice. But then alternatively, again, the Pixel 3a XL, if you're looking for a bigger phone with a really great camera. There it is. Battery life is pretty good here, as you might guess. You got a mid-range CPU, you have full HD plus resolution, not some psycho high resolution going on. Your regular 60 hertz refresh display. So the 10L has 4,000 milliamps and the 10 Pro has 4,500 milliamps. That's a lot. We're right up there with the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus family of phones and the S20 Ultra, even, with a lot less demanding stuff going on here. So battery life is really very good on these phones. I mean, you can do 5.5, 6 hours of screen on time with these phones, depending on what you're doing with your display settings. And obviously, if you're playing Fortnite, not so much, but if you're browsing the web, then yes. It supports Qualcomm Quick Charge 3.0. You get that in the box, along with the USB-C cable, and again, that TPU case. So that's the TCL 10L and the 10 Pro, and these will be available on Amazon on May 19th. Again, $250, $450. Also coming to Best Buy and Walmart at a later date, and they'll be on Canadian carriers later this year as well. TCL does have those Canadian connections after all. So as their first go at self-branded phones rather than using the BlackBerry name or the Alcatel name, it's a good start, I will say. And the displays on this and the size of the displays, pretty big phones, are the selling points. The performance is decent, even for the 10L, which has a lower-end CPU. I didn't really see much lag on it at all, and I was able to play games on it without having terrible problems. If you're a serious gamer, well, there are gaming phones and higher-end phones. The challenge also for them is that people do shop last year's phones. Like, you can look at an older generation OnePlus and get a great phone, or a Samsung Galaxy S9. You're probably not going to find an S10 for anything as cheap as $250, of course. So I'd say the 10L particularly is really pushing a little bit above its weight. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.